everybody, and welcome back to another live stream. And it is Wednesday, so that means we're going to be doing some portfolio reviews, giving some feedback to the lovely people who decided to share their portfolios with us. And we have three tonight. We've got Alex King's, Brandon Lentz, and Nathan Thomas's. So we're going to get to each of those in that order. So let's start with Alex's site first here. And I'm actually going to give this a little bit of a refresher because there were some animations that happen on page load here, which if we do it again, kind of catch those coming in here. And I think that's a nice touch. Kind of just shows you that Alex knows a little bit of JavaScript and can use it to manipulate the page. I'm always a little torn on JavaScript for your hero content, because if it doesn't load, if you're on a mobile device or something like that, there's you just don't have a ton of processing power. What if that doesn't load? What's your fallback option? And so I didn't test this by any means, but I hope Alex has had the foresight to have some sort of a fallback if this doesn't work for whatever reason, because if it doesn't work, then they lose all that really important context up there. But this looks great. So let's see here. We've got the AK up top, so a little bit of a logo just to anchor everything, and then these all look like anchor tags in here about project's content, which I think is great for information architecture, navigation. Hi, I'm Alex, and I like the coffee icon. It's just a little touch of personality, which I think which goes a long way to kind of showing less about who you are as like a developer or professional, but more about who you are as a person, which I think portfolios definitely should be doing. And then I'm a full stack developer with a love for coffee and intentional living. So tying that coffee into your value statement there, I think is great. I like what you're doing with the divider, the separator. I don't know if it's really necessary. Sometimes I think we over-rely sometimes on separators and dividers when a little bit of white space will go a long way and just take care of it as well. But I've looked at the site and it looks like that's kind of a pattern that you're using. So I think that's fine if you're going for it for an artistic consistency, visual consistency sort of reason, and you decided to make that choice and really stick with it. So I think that's good. Maybe the spacing though here, the white space looks fairly equidistant. Maybe it's slightly shorter here. It feels like a lot of white space, which I think a lot of white space is great. Normally, but maybe tightening it up a little bit underneath Hi, I'm Alex would bring, and even a little bit under here would just kind of bring it together a little bit more. But overall, this is looking really good. And I like what you're doing here with the sort of diagonal line. It really draws the user's attention down the page, and you're not taking up the entire viewport with your hero section. You have enough to afford into enough of additional content to let them know, hey, there's more to this website. Keep on scrolling. Which I just think is great. And we go right into your About Me, which you have your photo there. That's really nice. I always like when people have their photos on their portfolio. It's like, hey, I'm a real person, and this is who I am. I think that's great. Passionate about producing quality applications with a focus on design and user experience. Diverse experience in biology and technology allows me to integrate well with various teams, communicate well across disciplines, and help in establishing and completing project goals. I think it's a great statement and a great introduction about yourself there. So I think you kind of hit all the points, who you are, what value you're kind of bringing to the table, and a little bit of a background about yourself too. So I think this is great. The right alignment is a little, I don't know. It's a stylistic choice, and I get why you're doing it because you're trying to balance everything. Whereas because you've got the space there with the background, and you're contrasting it to what's going up here in the header or the hero section. So I get it. It's a little weird jumping from this line to this line just because it's so much shorter. So maybe if you could polish this up a little bit more, you can just get all this onto 3 lines. That would be awesome. I know that probably won't always work depending on the responsiveness of the site, but that could help because it feels just a little unbalanced here. But otherwise, or you could left align it, and then I think it would look fine as well. And that might not look great in the context of your overall design, so that's a choice you can make as well. But overall, this is looking really good. Say hello, I think that's really nice. The affordance on it looks like it's clickable. The hover state is a little subtle, so maybe that could be missed if somebody has some troubles picking up on color contrast or anything like that. But I think the movement is enough to really make a difference. So I like what's going on there. And that reminds me, one thing up here. So this is all caps as well. I don't, I get like "Hi, I'm Alex" that being all caps, that really just kind of making a statement. I wonder if you could get away with this being just kind of normal caps, just because it would help balance it relative to your "Hi, I'm Alex." It would just make it a little bit more complementary and supplemental, as opposed to being almost in the same treatment. And because it is a fair amount of text, it just make it a little bit easier to read for the average person. So that's just a thing to consider here. And we go into skills. I like what you're doing here with your skills, kind of listing them out and organizing them, as opposed to like doing like the chart or the bar chart or something like that. Sometimes I think that we sell ourselves short when we go that approach. Versus when we're listing the skills, we're kind of just telling the world we have the skills, but maybe if we have to make judgment calls to fill out a bar chart kind of arbitrarily, it's kind of like, okay, some of this, I can't put 100% for everything, and then all of a sudden you start selling yourself short. So this looks great here. And I like the organization, the grouping that's kind of, you've put in here as well. The text is a little bit small. Maybe it feels like this is larger than this here. So that could just be one thing to consider, bumping that up and just making it stand out, just so it looks like your paragraph here would looks a little bigger. So making those consistent, the same size, I think would help and help people really hone in on the skills you have here. And I like what you're doing with thank you for the follow there, Xander Jake. Q, appreciate it. I like what you're doing here with the backgrounds. I think this is really nice, kind of the alternating pattern. This dark purple and this lighter purple, there's not a ton of contrast there. So maybe making this purple darker and that one lighter. I know coming up with colors is super hard, and when you get to that you like, it's like, all right, I'm done, I'm good. But always just make sure the color contrast is there, and that really balances each other. This is pretty subtle, so maybe playing with that contrast a little bit more would help things pop and stand out. And then projects, so continuing with the right-hand alignment, which I think is great. I really like these cards here. I think they look really nice and clean. My design instinct is maybe not to use this separator, but that's just probably me kind of having a personal choice here, and being a little more subjective. But I think these are really nicely put together. This image, this little white space here it looks like the image got cropped on accident. I don't know if that's the case or if it is part of the website or anything like that, but just something that kind of catches my eye right away. Looking at these, I like that you've kind of got your skills here. I think that's great, kind of highlighting what you've used. The little description is really nice as well, kind of letting the user have a little bit of context about what it is they're looking at here. I like that this is clickable as well as these. So visit the site, view the code. That's a really nice touch and really clear call to actions for the user, which I just think is fantastic. And one thing I did catch, I think this site card header goes to a different website than the actual website itself. So that's just a little bug to catch. I know when I launched my portfolio for the first time, everyone tweeted at me, "Hey, you've got bugs in this, so fix it." So it happens. I totally get that. So just a little thing to catch. I think this goes to Evoke Bliss, and you're showing off Smith, Jones, and architecture here. So just keep that in mind. And I like what you're doing here. I didn't really notice this with the opacity on the navigation. I think that's a nice touch as well, and it's a way to, and I think that's just a nice touch generally. It's a way to let the rest of your content stand out while also keeping the nav fixed and present. So I think that's a nice touch. Good thinking there. And let's connect here. I like this form. You've got the labels up top, which I think is great for usability. This looks consistent with the other labels you've kind of been using throughout the rest of your portfolio, so I think that works really nicely. And these icons all look super good as well. One thing that is a little, I just worry about the text contrast or the color contrast here. It's kind of like just black on black, so I don't know if that's the most accessible. So maybe consider putting it through an accessibility checker or something like that, just to make sure that these will be visible to the user. If they have whatever their restrictions are, if they have any. Same with this kind of really gray text on this background here. It can be kind of hard to see for accessibility purposes. But overall, this is looking like a really nice website. You've put a lot of thought into it, into what you're writing here. And it shows because it's not like an overwhelming amount of information. This is a really curated amount of information. And it really comes through in the overall design, aesthetic, and what you've put together here. Just kind of looking at this again, maybe the contrast here between the card and the background here could use a little bit of work too. I know it's kind of it looks really nice, and I think if you can see it, it's perfect. But if there is a contrast issue, and it could become a little hard to see and kind of distinguish the whole card there from another piece of the content. Well, this is looking good. Maybe these could be a little bigger for your text hierarchy. It looks like they're the same as maybe this is that it's like an H3 or something. So it's consistent, which I appreciate. But maybe that could be an H2 just to bring a little more presence to what it is exactly about the project. But overall, this looks really nice. So great job, Alex. Not tons of. Thank you, Cam Dougal, for the follow. Appreciate it. Not tons of feedback on this one. I think you've put a lot of thought and a lot of work into it, and it shows. Just little things to take it to that next level, to keep iterating, keep working on it. But this is looking really good. So great job. So let's keep on rolling here. Oh, and I didn't take a look here. So your fave icon is the little coffee, which I think is nice, and that ties in as well. It looks like Nathan's using a cup of coffee as well. That's kind of a fun little trend. All right, so let's take a look at Brandon's here. I don't think there's any. That's kind of that fade in animation, which I think is super cool. And I can't tell if this is my screen or if it's the background here. I think it might be the background. There's some sort of slight star background here, which is interesting. It's really subtle, but I can kind of pick up on that. Let's see here. So we've already got these three lined up here, but next week we'll be doing this again, so I'll just add you to the list. And we can, I don't know if that came through here. But yeah, we can definitely add that to the list. So let's see here. We're talking about Brandon's site. This is really minimalist and really just kind of focused on Brandon, which is great. And he's kind of not giving a lot of information, but still telling us a lot about himself. The software engineer, fisherman, space fanatic, waiting for flying cars. There's a lot of personality in here without a lot of content, and it really shines through, and I think that's great. And you're kind of tying in that space fanaticism to the background here, which is awesome. I think that's really well done. The information architecture looks good. Home, project, content, resume, nice bright and red there. Really grabs your attention, especially relative to everything else on the page. And I think that's important because that is your resume, and you kind of want people to be looking at that, especially on your portfolio site. So I think that's a good idea. And then home, projects. I don't know if maybe this is multi-page, so I'd have to look at this a little bit more. I'm always kind of torn between having like a home button on a website. Normally, you kind of have a logo over here. If it's a single page site, it feels kind of redundant to me. But again, that's your choice to make. And you've got at least have some sort of affordance here that this is scrollable. I always advocate for this being slightly higher, but it looks like you've got some cool sort of parallax right down here. Yeah, that's really nice. So maybe you don't. I see what you're going for, so you don't necessarily need more of a to bring the viewport height up. Is that where I'm? Okay, so that looks like there are two different photos here. So let's refresh this again because there's a cool effect going on. So you're kind of unveiling yourself, and that ties into your fisherman up here. So that's great. And then you kind of add this in here, and so this is good. This part up here just feels a little. I don't want to say awkward, but it's just like there's a lot of color coming through relative to everything else here, because everything else is kind of black and white. So I think maybe considering how you want to handle that a little bit more, or maybe making it even bigger so the picture shows up a little bit more might help make that section feel a little bit better. So let's see here. And then we've got this about me. And then how I got into software development, which is great. Your hobbies. Nice. I think there's a lot of personality here. One thing I'm noticing is like when we normally do these kind of 3-column layouts, they tend to be equal size generally, and so the About Me feels kind of unbalanced relative to the other two, and especially because the other two have a lot more content here. So either maybe considering like stacking this a little bit differently, having the About Me even be bigger and on top of it and wider, and then you can put the other two sections below it somehow. And just kind of thinking about how you can reorganize this to kind of just flow a little bit better here. But overall, I think the content here is looking really nice. I haven't read it too closely, but let's read the About Me. So I'm a full stack software engineer based out of Tampa, Florida. I'm passionate about creating accessible, scalable, and user-friendly web applications. I think that's great, and I think that's such a nice statement. A little bit about who you are, where you're from. And again, anytime you can talk about your passions, I think that's a big win in a portfolio site. And obviously, you've got a little bit more content over here. So let's keep on scrolling here. Well, that's kind of a nice touch, kind of bringing in the info from the side there. I like what's going on there. So front-end web, functional features, built with React. I'm trying to see. So this looks like these are lists, but there are no bullets or anything like that. I think the indent works, but it just kind of feels a little like relative to the rest of your content, it doesn't feel as aligned and symmetrical. So either consider kind of getting rid of this padding or margin or whatever it is here, or adding in some sort of either icon or like maybe little check marks would be kind of cool. Just some way to kind of make this feel more like a bulleted list here. Thanks for sharing all your portfolios in the chat. If you want me to kind of do this live, I'm definitely happy to do it. We've got a lot of requests coming in these days, so it's which is awesome, and I'd love to take a look at everybody's. But in the interest of time, we'll probably only do like 3-ish, maybe 4 if we have a lot of time a week, and then kind of roll with that for now. But love seeing it. Love seeing all the feedback in the chat. That's awesome. So we got functional features here. Thank you. What the crit, I believe. Awesome. For the follow there. That's great. And yeah, secure your pages. SSL is definitely recommended, especially if you have like a contact form or something like that. Definitely a good security technique. I didn't even notice that. Thank you. I appreciate that. So the tech used built with React, style components, React routing, conditional rendering. Yeah, I think that's great to kind of highlight. And then you've got links to your code and links to your demo, which I think is great too. I don't know if this is a demo or if it's live. Maybe if you want to call it like live as opposed to demo, that might be I don't know. Just make it feel like less of like a fake, like not fake, but like a I don't want to say like a learning project, more like a real application. But again, that depends on your context. And I'm not quite sure if this is actually Instagram or if this was something you were practicing. If you're a dev at Instagram, though, that's pretty awesome. So let's see here. Then we've got the Good Time Journal. Building a week-long sprint. Awesome. CRUD. Journaling. React Redux. Yeah, I think this all looks good. These menu items kind of look like for a second there it looked like the navigation for your own website, and that caught me a little bit off guard. I know it's not after a second thought, but like just for a second there I was like, oh, did the nav change? So that may be something to consider here. I like the colors are changing. I think that's kind of cool. These both look green, and this one was purple, and that one's red. So there's not a ton of consistency between them, especially because these two share the same colors. I don't know exactly what you're trying to communicate with them. Maybe these two are related for some reason. That's what I'm thinking in my head now without knowing all the details. So that's just something to consider. Maybe all your projects should have the same color, and all of your and this could be different, or one color consistently throughout the interface. Your kind of accent color. So that's just something to consider as well. And then we've got this website here. So this S&J Architects, little personal website. Thank you, Blent1050, for the follow. Appreciate it. Third one should be blue. Got it. Yeah, these things happen. No worries. So static website and tech use. Awesome stuff. Strengths. Why you should choose me over the competition. I think that's nice to highlight. Might be a little on the nose, but if that's your communication style, I think that's great. So you got communication, input, experimentation. I like these icons here. Experimentation, yeah, I think that's a fun. I'm wondering. I was just trying to think if there's like a different term for that. Like, I don't want to say creativity, but like lifelong learner or something. If you're talking about staying current, because sometimes I don't know. I just kind of that's just a phrase that I was wondering if there's another word we can use there. Communication, input, um, yeah, don't like to be passive. We're giving feedback often. Front communication and input seem really similar to me. I know you're going for three, but just within your descriptions, it kind of feels like input is like a subset of communication. So maybe either considering like relabeling that or talking about it slightly differently there. That could just be something to consider. And then this nice red section here, we've got a nice contact form. Yeah, I think this is good. So the contact form is really wide, especially on this is a 15-inch MacBook. So it's just it feels really wide. So adding like a max width and some margin auto on the sides there, I think should fix that real quick. You're using placeholders, which I think is okay. I always advocate for labels just because that helps with people's short-term memories. Maybe for experimentation, something like curious, tinkerer. Yeah, I think those are fun labels too. And they're like kind of a little more aspirational and more of I guess those are nouns as opposed to a verb. Maybe I haven't been in school in a while, so that it's just more of a description of yourself. So back to this form here, kind of having so maybe going towards labels. That's just something I always kind of recommend. The color contrast here is a little hard. Like looking at text on top of red is really difficult for people. It doesn't look like it's turning into an input. So let's see here. So it looks like we're losing the label, unfortunately. So that could be a pattern too if you wanted to go that route. I would consider using like not having transparent inputs, especially if you're going to continue to use the red background, just because the color contrast might just not be there. I will break everything and rebuild it better. Yeah, that's kind of a fun description as well. Kind of thinking about why you should choose me. This is looking great. And then we've got the social icons down here and all rights reserved. Great, which I think again you put a lot of thought into this content here. The organization, the overall layout looks really really good. So I think I think your hero section is fantastic. It's not a ton of information, but it doesn't have to be. It kind of grabs the user's attention. It's funny, and it kind of says like, oh, all right, let me check this out. Who is this person that's waiting for flying cars, and what more can I learn about them? So I think it works really well. You've kind of got these icons here throughout the application. Once the user starts scrolling, I would be surprised if they continue to need this affordance, especially because you kind of lose it on these other parts of the interface where you have backgrounds. So you probably can get rid of all the other ones except for this first one maybe. I would definitely keep that one in there. Something to consider. What else? But yeah, everything else we talked about I think makes sense to me because I'm the one saying it. Great. Any questions? I think you might be in the chat, so if you have any questions for me, feel free to send them my way because this is to help you level up. Hit that next level there. But yeah, it's looking good. Thank you, SnowKid314 for the follow. I appreciate it. Let's take a look at the responsiveness. Yeah, that kind of works nicely. The infamous hamburger menu, I get it, I understand. I always advocate for saying menu instead of using the icons, but I can understand that. And this looks good. Maybe left aligning all of this on mobile just because it's more content than you probably want to read centerline would be something to consider. Looks like there's a little bit of an alignment issue here still, so mobile definitely consider removing the padding or the margin here. This is all looking really good. And I think these little borders add a nice touch on mobile for sure. And then the strengths, this is all looking great. Contact me, that looks really good on mobile. So I think you're good to go there. But overall, nice job. Good job thinking about your content, your narrative, and putting it all together. Oh, is this echoing? Sorry. I still have not been able to track this issue down, which is very frustrating for me. It seems to kind of come and go, so let me try this. that might have fixed it. Hopefully, I'm still sorry. I'm still new to this, and I still haven't gotten tons of time to really experiment with my setup here and figure it out. So I will keep working on it though. I keep trying little things and hoping that it's fixed the next time, but still haven't had tons of success with it. I was considering putting a container around my project images to account for the information fading. So if you refresh this, so let's see here. Let's see if I can. So around this background image here, so the project image to account for. I'm not quite sure I understand where the container would go. Kind of just in the background there. Right. So you're kind of saying like have it be like 2/3 of the screen as opposed to the full background. Does that make sense? I think that could work. I kind of like the fade in and the overlay. I think that's kind of nice as well. Kind of just letting it all kind of shine through and kind of show how related everything is. So I don't know if you necessarily need to do that. It's kind of a nice touch, and it's a little different. It's a little unique. I haven't seen it done this way in too many other portfolios. So it's another kind of checkbox in a column that sort of differentiates you from other portfolio sites. So I think you can leave it. I think it's a nice aesthetic touch. Certainly play with it though. If you feel like that's the direction you want to go and it looks better and it's starting to feel more cohesive, that's certainly a valid approach to take for sure. But overall, nice site. Good job. Alrighty, and now we're up to Nathan's portfolio here. So I am Nathan Thomas, a full-stack software engineer living in the Napa Valley and currently attending Lambda School. Let's talk. No problem. It was a pleasure. Thank you for sending your site in. I really appreciate you guys sharing your sites with me because otherwise we wouldn't be able to do this. So keep on sending them in, and we'll get you on the list here, and we'll keep rolling with this. I've got some ideas in the work for how we can facilitate this community and make it even more engaging, and how we can sort of outside of the streams, how we can all sort of keep together and talk and share tips and ideas. So stay tuned. That's all coming. So let's get back to Nathan's site here. So I think this content here is nice. So again, provides a lot of information about who you are, what you are, and what you're doing. So, and I like the let's talk as a call to action here. I think that works really nicely. I've been enjoying. I've seen a lot of portfolios start to do this, where they kind of have this little section. I think that's what I'm going to do for my portfolio if you've been following along. But you kind of have these call out links within your sort of about section. I think that's just a nice touch. Overall. And that looks like it goes to the website, this goes to your GitHub, let's talk, goes to the contact page. I'm wondering if like a little bit of white space here would be useful or not. Let's see if we can play with this here. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Is this gonna work for me? Sometimes this tool works and sometimes it's a little hard. Yeah, so that looks like it works. I don't know if that should be that much white space, but maybe just a little bit of a separator, just to kind of say like, okay, this is me, and this is my call to action. Maybe having like an icon that's kind of like a little arrow on it, or maybe even making it a button. That could be an interesting approach. But I like how you incorporated it into your text there. So I wouldn't play with it too much. I think you're on the right track. This is lots of questions on the tool. This is called VizBug, I want to say, which somebody shared with me on Twitter last time after I did the stream. So I think it's called VizBug. Maybe. Yeah, VizBug, Google Chrome. It's actually built by the Chrome team, so I felt pretty safe using it. Thanks for sharing. So you can just kind of pop in here and start editing real websites. So I'm going to keep using it for this because I think it's such a great tool. And you can do other stuff too with it. You can address padding and margin shadows, and you can move stuff around on the page. But yeah, well, I'll keep playing with it. I'm no pro with it by any stretch. I'm still learning the tool, so we can all learn together. Yeah, I also used to do it through Inspector, but this looks way faster because you can kind of like grab stuff. Let's see if this will work for me. Sometimes it's nice, but sometimes it doesn't cooperate quite the way I want it to. See, you can break the page very quickly, but a quick refresh kind of takes care of everything. So I think it's an awesome tool, and I definitely want to keep using it. Great. So current student, Lambda, previously Adventist Health. Yeah, right. It does feel like cheating a little bit, but I like what you're trying to communicate here. I'm wondering if there's like just too much white space here. And it kind of feels redundant that you're saying you're currently attending Lambda School and then and kind of just repeating it though. But I don't know, that could just be me. If you have like a work section, and that could just be projects, maybe kind of putting more of your work history into here would be a little bit of a way to approach this. And then you could have kind of a broad label that's kind of like, or I guess you're kind of blending your education and your work history here. So I don't know. I don't have a silver bullet for this one, but it's just something to experiment with here. Maybe let's see if this will work. We can get this working here. I think that's the right one. Yeah, so we can bring that over a little bit maybe. For some reason it doesn't want to cooperate with this image here. You can't undo. That's in Sketch I can undo things. And if that works for me, let's see if this will. Yeah, there we go. That's what I wanted. So maybe bring that over a little bit, just kind of cleans it up. And you might have to make this a little bit, or resize the images a little bit more, just to kind of make them work with each other. Yeah, that looks a little closer. Because otherwise it was kind of feeling boxy, and now you're kind of creating this triangle almost towards your featured projects, and it just kind of is adding some implied movement to the overall interface, which can help guide the user's eye downwards. So that would just be something that I would consider trying. So let's see. And then what it looks like we have sort of the night mode. Oh, I've got to get out of this now. Let's turn it off quick. So we've got night mode, and we've got day mode, and does that? Yeah, it does switch. Wow, look at that. I'm surprised that kind of flipped. So let's see here. We've got night and day mode. It's kind of, so I think this looks really nice on your going to night mode. It'd be kind of nice to have this, like, that toggle also invert. So maybe like having the sun be yellow and then the background be white or something like that, just to make it feel like that is toggling sort of as well. But that's just a thought. And then you're changing everything up here. Nice. I think that's a nice little bit of JavaScript to have in there to kind of be like, hey, look what I can do. I can figure this out. So let's see here. Featured projects, and these look nice. I really like putting them in desktops like this. I think that's a really nice approach here. One thing that's kind of, I don't know if this is true or not. So it looks like, because this side of the screen here catches your eye first, it feels misaligned, but it's not, because it's aligning down to here. And that's just sort of an optical illusion almost. These kind of things are really, really hard to sort of visually debug. But I think you're fine with what you're going for here. Maybe a little bit of context, like a sentence or two, like what is the Tipper payment app all about would be super awesome, just so the user doesn't necessarily have to go to the site or whatever it is you're showing. It looks like it's going to your GitHubs, which is great, but just so they kind of have a little bit more of a perspective on what exactly this is. A little more context, I think, will go a long way here. So definitely something I would consider adding, and maybe more of a link here, like view source code or something like that, just to make it more apparent where these links are going to be taking them. But I like what you're doing here with those little translations here, or transforms. That's a really nice approach. And then looking to start a project, get in contact. It looks like this is not a link, versus everything else up here that was. So definitely just a little bug. We all have them. It's all good. That's why we're doing this before you start your job hunt, right? so we can catch all these. But something to consider, and if you don't intend for this to be a link, then I would consider not making it purple and giving it the same affordance that all of your other links have. And then what else we have? We got GitHub, LinkedIn, Medium, Twitter, Instagram. Great. This all looks good. So what were these links do? So that goes to work. And that looks like it's just redirecting back to this page. I kind of question, does that even need a navigation link at this point? If it's just, it doesn't seem to be, like it's not scrolling with the page and doesn't really seem to be adding any functionality, so do you even need it? Is a question. And then because you already have Let's Talk down here, do you really need contact as well? These are kind of the questions that come to my mind, but if you've got a compelling case for it, go for it. This is your site, not mine. Let's see what contact does. Oh, nice. It's a nice little contact form here. Like what you're doing here. You've got some labels, which is great. With your placeholder context, like I know it's always super tempting to just repeat the label, but that's it's kind of a waste of space in my opinion. They already should know what's going on here. So what you can do instead of having like placeholder text that is just a repetition of the label is provide like sample content for the user. So for instance, if it's the name, and then in the placeholder you could say like John Doe. And then for email, it would be like johndoe@example.com. Subject, let's start working on a project. That way you're just kind of priming the user for the information that you're expecting as opposed to just repeating yourself. So that's a tactic that I often will use. For something this small, you don't even need that per se. You can get away with not even having placeholder text if you don't want it. But that's just something to consider. And then I like what you're doing with the clear button here. I would consider the contrast here. Submit is the action that you want the user to be taking. I imagine. It's a big assumption here, but we're going to go with it. So this clear button has like the same visual treatment. So they're essentially equivalent in your overall visual hierarchy. So consider making this more of an outline button, or maybe even a link button, as opposed to a full-on purple primary call to action button. So that way the submit stands out relative to the clear button. And honestly, this is such a small form. I don't know if you necessarily need clear. It might be nice to have like a cancel button instead of clear, so that will just take them back to the previous page. Because right now it's kind of unclear how I would, apart from hitting the nav. I guess that's why this navigation's here. It's to be consistent across pages. But if you're keeping your logo there, I think users would understand how to get back, especially with the cancel. It'd be a great user test though, wouldn't it? So that could be something to consider as well. So this looks really nice though. The fields look good. There's color contrast there. Yeah, clear certainly could be used for long forms. Definitely, I think that's it has its place. I just wonder if it would make sense for such a small form. We lost our spacing there, but that's okay. So this is great though. It's got I think all of the content you need. It's a little bit of personality here. Let's see here. Something worth considering. It's minor, but instead of swapping your logo images in night mode, you can use CSS filters to make the same lambda and Adventist logos white. Oh, that would be... I didn't look at the code or the implementation details. Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. Okay, so there's a little bit of a lag there, or at least there was the first time. So yeah, so maybe a CSS filter would be more of an appropriate way to go. Yeah, so that's true. Yeah, I know when I'm looking at developer portfolios, I will often hop into Inspector and look at the code base. Sometimes people leave little hidden messages for other developers in the comments or something. So I always like to look at the source code. I've seen websites where they have for more like brands and companies, they'll actually put job postings in the code, and so if you inspect it, it's kind of like, hey, you were checking us out. Here's a special email that you can apply to a job for because we like curious people. And I've always been super impressed by companies that did that. So that's, again, something you can do. With hey, you're checking me out. Let's get in touch. Here's my email. Something like that I think would be super cool. We take a look at this responsibly, too. Let's see what's going on here. Yeah, I think that makes sense. That stacks. All looking good. The white space here, you might want to consider bumping the featured project a little higher so it looks a little more connected. Otherwise, this kind of is almost, there's a little bit of more white space here versus here, but they're almost the the same size there. So this kind of looks like it's floating in sort of white space land. But this is all looking good. Get in contact. All that stacks really nicely. Yeah, and I think that's all you need for your mobile. Maybe consider adding a little more white space here. I know I've got big thumbs and I often fat finger things on mobile, so consider your surface area there a little bit. But otherwise, this is looking really, really nice. Let's see here. Can you preload the night mode images? You can, but it's still a DOM manipulation. Switch the images. Much smoother to swap CSS in my experience. Yeah, that's probably. You probably do all sorts of fun things to make this more optimized and make that transition have a little less jank at the beginning and just be a little bit smoother. Tons of stuff that you can do. A little bit beyond the scope of what we're talking about here, but definitely feel free to experiment. And the chat's great for that. We've got tons of really smart people in there, so feel free to ask questions, fire away. Awesome. Well, thank you, Nathan and Brandon and Alex, for sharing your portfolios with us. This was really, really awesome to go through all these, and I hope you guys definitely took some learnings from this. And again, as I like to say, I don't understand the full context. I'm making a lot of assumptions here. It's kind of easy for me to stand on my pedestal and say this should be different and that should be different, and I recognize that. And I don't have all the answers, and I don't know all the details that went into building these. So I really appreciate you guys sharing this with me and just letting me go through here. And so I hope some of this was valuable. I hope this is actionable advice, and that I provided enough of an explanation for you to feel good about any of these suggestions here. So no, that's where I'm coming from, and I hope that came through here. So on that note, I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening, and we will be doing this again next week. So I will see you all then. Have a good night.